Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have more of an educational video for you guys. We're going to be going through some Lego sets and determining whether or not they are street legal. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. We're going to figure that out today. Starting with an easy one, Luke's Land Speeder. I'm going to go ahead and say this is street legal. Alright, I don't see this going too fast in the regular roadways. We got a bit of safety features with the windscreen. You would think, hey, he's got a gun on that thing, but it's not part of the actual vehicle. It is storage for his weaponry, and in Tatooine, kind of necessary. I think this particular speeder is pretty maneuverable, especially in tighter quarters on smaller streets, so I'm gonna give this one a pass. Next, we have the N1 Starfighter. I'm gonna go ahead and say this is not street legal. First of all, this is not built for the road. It is built for the air and space. So off rip, fail. Second of all, it has some heavy laser cannons mounted in the front. Not a big fan. You're gonna have to get some special permits from the city to be able to get this thing on the road. Whether or not this is airspace legal, that's not what we're determining today. I would assume so, depending whether or not you get those permits for those heavy blaster cannons up front. Next, we got a bit of a weird one here. It's a speeder, but it's a little smaller. It does have laser cannons on it, little less dangerous in terms of firepower. Speeds, on the other hand, I think this can reach some pretty high speeds, but at the same time, it's pretty maneuverable. I don't foresee this going too quickly through regular roadways. That Stormtrooper is pretty secure on there. I would probably compare this to like a motorbike in the real world. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a pass. I'd say this is road legal, ready for the streets. Next, you're probably thinking, oh my god, the Corporate Alliance tank droid, that's my favorite set. To me, I see a logistical issue here. First of all, military vehicle, that does mean we're gonna need some special permits to get this thing on the road. Second of all, way too much weaponry going on here. I also see a flick-fire missile. That's a no-go. I don't foresee this getting approved for any permits from the city. Not to mention, I don't know how well this thing is going to be maneuvering through the city, especially on tighter roadways. It's going to be tough, even if you do get past all of those difficult permits from the city. So I'm going to give this one a failure. This one is not street legal, though I do love the set though. Next, we got a bit of a two-piece here. We got the General Grievous's wheel bike chase set here. First, I'm going to talk about the Boga mold here. First of all, it's a creature. You can consider it a pet when getting it approved by the city. Given that it's trained and well-mannered, I could definitely see this going through the streets. Size is pretty forgiving here. I could see this maneuvering some pretty narrow streets, some one-ways, no issue. I would give it a pass. As long as you get through licenses for riding one of these on the streets. Of course, you're going to need to get some training in. Personally, I think Obi-Wan is more than capable of controlling this beast. Next, I want to talk about General Grievous's wheel bike. It's a little more difficult here. I'm not sure if it's considered a military vehicle, so you might get around those permits when it comes to the city. What you will not be able to get around is the weaponry. I see some cannons on the inside of that big wheel and on the opposite side of the cockpit. You're either going to have to take those weapons off or get some special permits from the city. Again, I'm not sure how you're going to get around that. Other than that, I'd say this is street legal. You can get some pretty high speeds when you're on the wheel itself, but when you're on the four legs, I could foresee this maneuvering pretty well through the streets. I don't think it would be okay to ride around on streets with that wheel. You could do some pretty gnarly damage from that wheel alone, so I would say on the normal roadways, use the legs. Open field, open desert, go hog wild with the wheel. But I kind of see this as a little bit of a hard one to get out on the road. I would have to take it up with your local DMV. Next, we got a classic, the Rebel Speeder. I'm gonna go ahead here, off rip. This one is street legal. First tiny issue here is that mounted cannon. Though it can be disconnected and left behind, it's still part of the original vehicle. I would ask your local officials about permitting for that massive cannon. That being, it's detachable, so you could get around it. You would also first assume that, hey, there are two weapons on either side of this thing. Actually, that is cargo space for the passengers, so they can put their weapons on the sides. Not necessarily you. So, in terms of permitting, you wouldn't really consider those weapons attached to the vehicle itself. In terms of speed, I don't think it's going to hit very high speeds. I don't see this being an issue on the road, especially when it comes to tighter roadways. So I'm gonna give this one a pass. Next, we got Jabba's Sail Barge. This is a nightmare. I would probably compare this set to like a yacht in the real world. Definitely not street legal. Way too big, way too clunky. It probably hits some pretty high speeds. I would say this vehicle is more suited for the open desert, like in Tatooine. Of course, Jabba the Hutt, being the guy that he is, can probably get around some permitting from the city and get this street legal. When it comes to weaponry, you do have that cannon on the top. Again, the open desert, you can definitely get away with it. You know, it's self-protection. You need that type of thing in the desert. But open roadways, that's a no-go. I'm going to say not street legal, but Jabba knows some guys who know some guys. Next, we got a fan favorite, the ATTE. First of all, it's a military vehicle. Not sure how the permitting is going to work. Second of all, it's got those big legs and feet. Gonna do a little bit of damage to the roadways. Not sure how that's gonna go over with the city. Not to mention the 6 medium laser cannons, ball turrets out on the front and back. Not a fan. That's going to be a logistical nightmare. And then the big cannon on top, can't get around that one. I see this as impossible to get a permit for. And that's without mentioning the sheer size of this thing. I'm going to go ahead and say this is not street legal. Next, we have another classic Republic vehicle, the Clone Turbo Tank. Similar story to the ATTE. This thing is massive. On the upside here, we do have wheels as opposed to legs. A little safer in terms of damage done to the road. You're not going to do a whole lot of damage to the surface when you're rolling on all these wheels. It is dangerous in terms of size. This thing is absolutely massive. Not to mention the missile launchers on the sides, the turrets. My guess is that this would be a nightmare to get permits for. I wouldn't even bother trying to get any sort of licensing here. I'm going to say not street legal. Next, we have the Sand Crawler. This thing is kind of tricky. First of all, the speeds. I don't think this thing can go very fast, but still, just the sheer size of this thing, I don't think it would even fit on an open freeway, let alone regular roadways. So just on that basis, I'm gonna give this one a fail. Not street legal. Also, those big treads, I could see it being a little nicer to the surface of the road, not doing a whole lot of damage there. I would see this more as like a cargo ship, shipping droids across the open desert. not much else to say here. Not street legal. Next, we have another military vehicle here. Little tricky with this one. The homing spider droid. Off rip, those 4 massive legs. Gonna make it difficult to maneuver around roadways. Not sure how fast this thing can go. Top speeds, I don't know about this one. Other than very open roadways, I don't see this thing coming anywhere near a regular street at all. Another big issue I see with this one is the giant turret on the bottom and on the top, that laser cannon. That's a nightmare in and of itself. Not street legal. Get this thing out of here. Next up, we have a classic, the Republic AT-AP. It is a little easier to get around that permit situation than the AT-TE. It is a little smaller, a lot less leggage. It does have that third leg that folds out, but the big issue here are those cannons. First of all, that manned turret up top, you could get around that one, but that massive one right below it, I don't see that one getting past the city officials. This one, given that it's a military vehicle, it's more for military activities, not street legal. Next, we have these pod racers, and I'm gonna go ahead and say absolutely not. I don't even think Anakin is of legal age to operate heavy machinery such as a pod racer like this. Second of all, where are the safety features on these things? Open cockpits everywhere. Also, how do I know that those cables for each of these pod racers are sturdy and durable enough to stay connected? I don't foresee this being a very safe vehicle out on the road, but for recreational purposes, go hog wild all you want. Do whatever you want out in the open desert, whatever it is, wherever it is you are racing, go ahead. Just not in the streets. Get these things out of here. And last, but certainly not least, the AT-AT. Pretty obvious, no, not street legal. First of all, the cannons in the head portion, the cockpit, not too terrible. You can definitely get around them on a smaller vehicle, but given the sheer size of this thing, I don't foresee this getting past any city officials. Also, those massive legs with the big footprint, don't think that's going to do it any favors. This thing will tear up the road the moment it steps out onto it. I see this more as a military vehicle, which it is, obviously. This thing is not built for the road. And that is all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Let me know what other sets you would like for me to determine whether or not it is street legal. This video was a lot of fun to make. I am ExoBreak360 on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Make sure you drop a follow, drop a like, subscribe. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.